title for the sermon this morning is The Meaning of Life, Part 1. The vanity of life under the sun is felt in all creation, yet there is a God in heaven who loves us. The meaning of life. This is not the life of Brian, in case you were wondering. If you know anything about Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the life of Brian is a relatively irreverent and unholy movie about the life of Brian, who thought he was the Messiah. But he wasn't. He was just Brian. And you go through the mishaps and all the miscues of, somebody who was acting like the Messiah, and, he's just Brian. No, this is not that. This is genuinely asking ourselves, what is the meaning of life? Some of us might ask that question and be like, that's too much. That's too much. Put me back in the funny papers. Put me back in something easy. Put me back in football or whatever is something I don't have to engage too much, because that sounds utterly serious. It is. And the thing is life isn't a joke. We're not playing. Sometimes I think people unintentionally enter into the realm of a life of just happy clappy unseriousness, and the thing is you're whistling Dixie when you do that. What is whistling Dixie? It's what the Southern troops used to do. It was a nonsense song that they would sing and whistle about, and the phrase came about, they'd say, well, you ain't whistling Dixie. In other words, you ain't singing about nothing. You ain't singing about something that never came to be. The fact is life is much more than the levity that we want to put to it, and often life is much more than the levity that the church wants to give it. As we were standing here praying beforehand, I said, look, this is the first sermon of the year. It's not going to be an easy sermon. I thought it was going to be way better than it's going to be, by the way. I was excited to preach this, and I got to the end of the week, and I was like, man, I'm mildly depressed. Everything's meaningless. Everything is vanity. Lord, help me here. And they're like, oh, be positive, be encouraging, be Christian, be K-love. And I was like, what? Wait a second. They didn't quite say all of that, but that's kind of where we're at, right? We want to say happy things, and we want to be positive and encouraging and Christian, right? Because that's what Christians are, and we kind of sometimes try to outdo one another in being maybe the happiest, and maybe being the most, entertaining or the most easy with life. But the fact is, especially after you read this, life is tough, man. Buy a helmet, right? Because nobody gets out of it unscathed. I don't care how good you plan. I don't care how good your 5-year plan is, how good your 10-year plan is, or how good your 15-year plan is. It's going to be different when you actually get there. And the fact is life isn't easy. And here's the cool thing about Ecclesiastes. And this is what makes it so relatable. Because when you read it, you see life. You're like, yep, seen that. Yep, been there. Yep, done that. And this is written from a guy who experienced everything that there is to experience in magnificent quantities. Here's a man who tested the hypothesis, does money make you happy? And I've heard many a preacher and people say, I don't know if money makes you happy, but I'd sure like to try. I don't know if I want to try. I want to be thankful where I'm at. And when you read something like this, or even you experience your own bits and pieces of money, guess what? Money is like a vapor. It is like a fleeting fire. It falls through your fingers faster than you can imagine. And if you amass enough of it, eventually it becomes a problem for you. And if you don't get to enjoy it, you die and someone else enjoys it. Whether it be your kids, who may not be grateful for it and have expected it from you, or Uncle Sam. That's the kind of stuff we read in this book. And so when we talk about the meaning of life, if we just read this book for the crass literature that it is, we do end kind of just in a hopeless despair. We end in a what's the point? We end in the so what? Where's meaning? Where is purpose? Where is good? I love this because it has an undercutting and not so subtle, but kind of subtle in the reader's mind picture that there is something outside of being under the sun. 35 times that word is used, under the sun. And so he is talking about the futility and the meaningless of life under the sun. And how many of us are under the sun? All of us. You don't escape it. Everybody exists in a world in which we are under the sun. And so it becomes this literary device used to place us in a place where nothing is right. Things are crooked, things are bent, things are incomplete, they cannot be counted. And what it really is saying is, here's how life is, and it is not as it should be. So when you read this, I hope you read it, because we're not going to cover every verse in the 6 chapters that we're going to cover this morning. When you read this week, think of it in those terms. Here's a statement by the king who has experienced so many things, and he is stating that this is how life is, but it is not as it should be. There's something broken here. Have you ever got that feeling? I got to go to Billings for a couple days this week, and as we were up there hanging out for my 22nd wedding anniversary, I got to watch TV. Wasn't exciting because I worked from the top of the channels to the bottom of the channels, turned it off, and went to bed. But as I got to Fox News, I was like, I'm going to spend some time educating myself in the things of the world. I was miserably hopeless. Fox News feels like something's broken. I was like, well, I'm going to CNN. I don't care if Kevin calls me a Democrat or not. I'm going to go over there, liberal mind and all, and I am going to see what they have. And guess what? They kind of said the same thing. Everything's broken. I was like, well, MSNBC's got to do better. It's the very next one, I think. Went to the next one. They all say the same thing. There's a problem. Their solutions to it are different, and their allegiances to different group of people and different power portions is different. But the fact is, they all grasp reality. Things are broken. And here's the thing. They've always been. They've always been broken. It's not like it just showed up yesterday. Well, Reagan got out of office and now everything's broken. No, it was broken then too. And there was criminals and corrupt people doing things that are described in the book of Ecclesiastes over and again at every portion in the history of mankind. The thing is, the world gets it too. They just don't know what to do with it. In this, we're going to go through these verses and we're going to look at these things, and we're going to see that there is a particular meaningless to toil. There's a particular meaninglessness to pleasure. There's a particular meaninglessness to power and influence. There's all of these things that we would try to ascribe meaning in life to, and the fact is success doesn't bring meaning. Stuff doesn't bring meaning. Power and influence does not bring meaning. Meaning comes from somewhere else. So, let us start. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 1. The words of the preacher. Now you might stop. You might be like, I thought this guy was a king. Well, he is the king of Jerusalem, son of David, most likely Solomon. And yet he takes up the mantle of being the one who is going to be a collector of words for the sake of the people. He is undertaking a task in writing this book for the benefit of the people who reads it. He is seeking to give them good. So just by labeling himself the preacher, right away, this is not the Stoic. This is not the philosopher. This is not like we're reading some kind of tome from Nietzsche in which afterwards we side with the nihilists. All right? If you don't know anything about Nietzsche, just let it be said that he was a philosopher who believed in nihilism. Nihilism is the basic philosophy that there is no meaning in life, so do whatever you want. This is not the author's conclusion, though it may feel like that at times. Vanity of vanity, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. If you have maybe the NIV or some other translation, it might say that everything is meaningless. We don't necessarily use that word vanity in the same ways today, but it means that. Everything's meaningless. What is the point? What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun goes down, it hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north, and around goes the wind. And on its circuit the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the stream flows, there they flow again. It's all vanity. It's just going to keep going around in a circle over and over and over again. It is Groundhog's Day, right? I'm not suggesting you go watch that movie, but it's a good one, right? It's just the super repetitious happening of the same thing over and over and over again. And when you are gone, the earth will still be here doing that same thing. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. Because they always want more, don't they? They are like leeches. Give and give is the request of the eyes and the ears. They want more. And everything is full of weariness. I remember when I went from working construction, swinging a hammer, doing concrete, doing roofs, doing foundations, doing all kinds of stuff like that. And I became a pastor. And then I was shocked to find out I'm just as tired doing this as that other stuff. Wait a second. What happened? Why? Because it doesn't matter what we're doing, whether we're behind a desk or we're swinging a hammer or digging a shovel into the ground or running some welding, doing whatever. There is a toil in everything in life. What has been is what will be. And what has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Have you came up with something new? Hide it. You know why? Because you're utterly unique. You, my friend, have done something that has never been done before, and it has come up with something new. We like to walk around in our day and age and talk about the multiplication of information and how advanced and how far along down the road we are. No, we're not. You know, all we've done is find out ways to communicate with each other more quickly and communicate more poorly. Right? I mean, what does Instagram do? What does Facebook do? What does all these other interweb things do to us? Somehow we're remarkably unable to see things with clarity. Just like is the human condition in so many portions of life. The same things that were are the same things that are. What has been done will be done. You, my friend, are not utterly unique. Sometimes we like to think of ourselves as terminally unique, but the fact is we're not. I have fallen victim to that, the classic blunder, all the time of thinking, I'm something special. And it hurts my feelings to be told I'm not. But the fact is there's great good to be told, you ain't special, bub. And to recognize that I'm just like everybody sitting here. People with desires, living in a fallen world as a fallen person, looking for meaning in life. And the same things that have been are the same things that will be. Trust me, it gets better, I hope. Is there a thing in which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things, yet to be among those who come after. You might be thinking, well, there's never been some of the things that are going on today. And I just want to hit this real quick. Have you ever looked into the archaeological digs in Egypt and things like that? Have you ever looked into the story of the Tower of Babel? They were technologically advanced enough to be able to do things that they cannot do today. They were technologically advanced enough to think that they could build a tower to the sky because they were gods and they were going to go hang out with the gods. And it wasn't simply delusions of grandeur. God had to absolutely scatter them, or he was like, oh, here they come. The fact is even in our era, we are not utterly unique. Man has done amazing and magnificent things, and we have forgotten them. We don't recognize them. We don't see them. Time seems to wash over all things, and all things are forgotten. This points to the absolute futility. Verse 12, I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I have applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. You might be like, what does that mean? It's a proverbial utterance from a guy who wrote many of the Proverbs, basically stating things are broken. Things are not as they should be. If this should be straight, it's off kilter considerably. And if there should be the ability to count something, you can't count it if it is lacking and not there. There is something broken, and this is his point. And he has set himself, as a preacher, as a king, to figure this out. I'm going to apply the wisdom, and if we remember, Solomon is the wisest man that ever lived. He's going to apply the wisdom that God has given him to try and figure out what is the point. I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me. And my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceived that it was also but a striving after the wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation. And he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. Why? Because now you know. And now you know that you can't take care of the things that you might want to take care of. Solomon can't create the perfect utopia. Why? Because people are going to be people, and he is going to be himself, and things are not going to work out the way that they should. Why? Because the fallenness of humanity is there, and this is the vexation of having this wisdom. Wisdom doesn't give you control. Wisdom does not give you power. Wisdom just allows you to see things that increase sorrow. You might be thinking, well, what's the point of wisdom? Well, he goes through that same thing. Before he gets to wisdom and talks about it, though, he goes to the first place that many people go to. You know what? I'm gonna test this pleasure thing. I'm going to test this pleasure thing, whatever kind of pleasure it might be. It might be type 2 pleasure, where you're, going to be doing all these difficult things to live as much life as you possibly can and experience as much as you can. It might be these hedonistic things where you're just going to satisfy the lust of the flesh as much as you possibly can. There's any manner and measure of pleasure that we might be able to seek from this world in different ways, and he puts his heart to it. Chapter 2, verse 1. I said in my heart, come, now I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this also was vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I search with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay a hold of folly, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted them in all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves and have slaves who were born in my house. I had also great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold, the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and my many concubines, the delight of the sons of men. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me, and whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, it was all vanity and striving after wind, and there is nothing to be gained under the sun. Now, I hope you're able to stay with me. I know that was reading more than 10 verses at once, but you see his turmoil as he goes through. You see the expanse and the breadth of his experience. And does this not bear witness to what we get the privilege of seeing and maybe many of us experiencing? Possessions and things and projects and different stuff that we do, and not withholding anything good from ourselves that we view and call good, it ends in vexation. That's what makes sense of the multi-billionaire who literally has everything, who has no one that says no to him, goes out and hangs himself. You're like, why? He had everything. Did he? We can have all that there is and still have a meaningless life. We can have all that the world has to offer and yet find no pleasure in it. And this is what he is stating. This is what he has experienced. Is that not our life? Think of the first car you got. It may not be as big a deal to you as it is to me, but I remember the first car I got. I stacked hay all summer for my dad to get this like Toyota station wagon. It was green. It was terrible, wasn't it, Matt? And it couldn't go 60 miles an hour downhill with a strong wind at its back, but it was mine, right? And I remember getting in it, and I got a car. And after the first trip to town and back, I was like, I want something different. Because at one point you had to get out and almost do this up a hill, right? It was terrible. And yet, how excited was I? Or the first time I actually bought a car off of a car lot. Oh, it was shiny. There was nothing wrong with it. All is well. I was like, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to hold it forever. I was petting it with a diaper. It was awesome. And I get home and all of a sudden I realize this thing's been wrecked before. What's wrong here? And all of a sudden you hear the exhaust leak and you're like, wait a second. Life promises us things and that they come back with rust and moth and decay. They don't last. You get that new thing and you want that other thing. That's what it means by the eyes always wanting more and the ears always wanting more and the mouth always wanting more. Take the time to read it. It addresses all of us. This is the human condition. This is us. We fall into this vexing reality that everything that is done has been done. Everything that we would think of to do is there. So what's the point? If you go through and read, you're going to read phrases like this in chapter 2, verse 24. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For who apart from Him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? Stop right there. If you finish reading the end of chapter 2, going into chapter 3, you're going to see the same pattern of here's vain things, here's things that leave you upset. You're going to end up leaving your wealth to somebody else. You're going to live in unjust lands. And he says this is the greatest good. And often we go, well, what is the difference between this great good that he's talking about and the vanity of what's there? Well, it's significantly different. First, he talks about enjoying what? The toil. Not the fruit of his toil, but the actual toil itself. How many of you guys like toil? You're like, I'm just going to wake up this morning and toil away, leaving the door and you're like whistling. I wish I could whistle well. But the little dwarves whistle as you work. Right? As you go out. Is that what, Lacey hears every morning as you go to make the pizza? Or does it sound more like the Dunkin' Donuts guy? Time to make the donuts. Ugh. The fact is there is joy in the process of what God has given us, and it has to be in relationship to Him. This is what? From the hand of God. For apart from Him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? Apart from a relationship with our Creator, what is the point? If we only have what is under the sun, what is the point? If I have nothing beyond what is here in this moment, what is the point? There is none. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die, and that's it, is how many people think. If we know not God, the Creator, if we know not God, the Sustainer, if we know not God, the one who rules all things, then what is the point? Even my enjoyment in the things that are good in this life, because there are good things in this life, is nothing but acid to my teeth. There is a vanity in toil because of what it produces, but there is not a vanity in toiling as a creature. right? And I'm not saying that in a crass way of just making you subhuman, but it is a creature created by the Creator. You are His. And He has put you on this earth to do stuff, right? What did He do? He created us. And He created us to do what? Work. And work in our society is what? A 4-letter word, isn't it? It might as well be profanity. Right? How many of us jump out of bed in the morning like, ha ha, here I go? Not many of us. And if you do, maybe you have found the secret of being able to rejoice in the toil that God has put you to. Otherwise, you are just going to find the vanity and the meaninglessness that is there of doing the same thing over again, building the same house over again, welding the same line over again, doing the same financial reports over again. They all begin to blur. They all begin to look the same. They all begin to feel the same mundane, menial task over and over and over again. What are we called to do? Find joy in the toil that God has given you. Realize that this is from Him. Realize that then there is a time for everything, no matter what it is. We live in a time in which we seek to insulate ourselves from anything bad from ever happening. We seek to insulate ourselves, and we have an economy of decision-making in which we shape our entire lives around security and never suffering. But as you read this next section, there's a time for what? Being born and for dying. There is a time for what? Planting and plucking up, a time for healing and breaking down, a time for building up, a time for weeping, a time for laughing. There are so many realities that there is a time for in our life. We need to give the time to them. Kind of like what we're going to experience tomorrow with Miss Peggy, with Miss Kay. We live in a society that does not want to give time to something like that because it's just so sad. I don't want to give time to that. It's just so discouraging. I don't want to give time to that, but we should. Why? There's a time for it. It is a universal experience of mankind to go to the grave, and there is a time for it. And so why should we fear it? Well, we fear it because we know not the Creator. We fear it because we know not the Lord and His plan. We fear it because we know not the salvation that comes from our God. But if we have the salvation of our Lord, we end up sounding like John at the finishing of the book of Revelation. Come, Lord Jesus. Not to be morbid or have a death wish or something weird like that. And while I am here, I am going to seek to be well-pleasing unto my Lord. But what? I am hastening the day of the Lord, hoping He comes quick. Death for the Christian is different than death for the world. And so all of a sudden we go from meaningless and hopeless to hopeful, recognizing that there is a time for everything, and within all of mankind there is something particular that is put. Chapter 3, verse 9. What gain has the worker from his toil? I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful and in its time. Let's stop right there. The Bible always and again, and the writer of Ecclesiastes over and again points to the beauty that is in life. Though he is saying there's vanity, though he is saying there's meaningless, there's beauty. There's beauty to the newborn baby. There's beauty to the setting sun. There's beauty to people and the relationships that they have with one another. Don't miss that for all this vanity talk and all this meaningless talk. There is beauty, and God has placed it there. And God has set us to a particular duty with a particular toil. He has made everything beautiful and in its time. Also, He has put eternity into man's heart. Yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. God has put eternity into our heart. And the greatest good that we can have is to do what? To do good. To rejoice. The nihilistic tendencies of reading these things about the meaninglessness of mankind and the things that we have should not conclude with, well, I'm going to burn it down then. Is that not the conclusion of many people? Well, if there's no meaning, then let's just be as bad as we can be. But the fact is God has put eternity into our hearts. We know that there is something more than what is under the sun. And as He has given us this understanding of eternity, He hasn't given us the ability to understand everything other than to simply trust in Him. We see in this, the author, the preacher, the king, has an innate trust in the Creator, has an innate dependence upon Him, has an understanding of who He is to the best of his human ability. And he sees the greatest good that we have here is to continue to labor and toil. Verse 13, also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. Do you hear that? Your toil is God's gift to you. Have you ever talked to a retired man that decided to go do something like collect seashells or, do nothing? I'm going to wake up late and hang out and have nothing to do for the first time in however long, and then within a couple of years, they are no longer? Have you ever met a retired man that everybody around him is like, you need to slow down? And he's like, nope. Don't slow men like that down. Don't slow women like that down. Retirement should just mean I'm doing something different. The toil that God gives us is a gift, and we shouldn't be seeking to spend the golden years of our life doing nothing because somehow doing nothing is superior. It's not. Work, toil, and find joy in it, my friends. There's nothing innately godly about just laying aside the toil and the work that God has given us. There's nothing godly about it. Work. And here's the thing, work was cursed at the fall, was it not? But what happens in Christ? There is a redemption and a restoration, not simply of we get to go to heaven, but there's a restoration of who we are as His creatures and as we've been created to be. And that is to toil in this life and to find joy in that. To find pleasure in the food that we get to eat. To find joy in the gifts that God gives us in one another. And to recognize there is more than what is under the sun. He continues on. I perceive, verse 14, I perceive that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to, nor anything taken from it. God has done it, so that people fear before Him. That which is already has been, that which is to be already has been, and God seeks what has been driven away. Fear God. Fear God. What do we fear? You might be infinitely tough and go, I fear nothing. It's nonsense. Come hang out with me for a few minutes and I will have you fearing something. Right? It could be the stick I'm swinging at your head, but it will be something. The fact is we fear. We have it innately built within us, this anxious driving structure. No matter how macho we are, fear exists in the human heart. So what do you fear? Again, some people fear death. Some people fear not being productive. Some people fear not having satisfaction. Some people fear fill in the blank. I don't know what it is for you. You do. What do you fear? Whatever we fear, we have a tendency to worship. We have a tendency to bow before it. We pay homage to it, whatever it is. Stop fearing that. What should we fear? Well, the Creator, God. The one who makes things and they can't be undone. The one who made us. The one who is eternal in all of His right and it will be remembered forever even though everything that we do will be forgotten. Remember the one who created us and put us here and assigned tasks to us and appointed things for us to do. The one who came and gave us work. What did the Creator do? Came and gave us work. What did we do? Rebelled against it. What is Christ doing? Restoring and making it new. Understand that our response to the futility of life mustn't be a nihilistic thing or a hopelessness, but it is finding hope in the right place and looking beyond what is underneath the sun. It is seeking to understand what God has for us as we worship Him and we come to Him. Jump with me to chapter 5. Here's our response of standing before God. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. To draw near, to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools. For they do not know that they are doing evil. Be not rash with your mouth, nor let your heart be hasty to utter word before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore let your words be few. For a dream comes with much business, and a fool's voice with many words. When you vow a vow to God, do not delay paying it, for He has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you vow. It is better that you should not vow than you should vow and not pay. Let not your mouth lead you into sin, and do not say before the messenger that it was a mistake. Why should God be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? For when dreams increase and words grow many, there is vanity, but God is the one you must fear. There is a wholesomeness to fearing God. We are adverse to thinking about this concept of fear. We don't like thinking about it. It's uncomfortable. We don't like admitting that we fear things. But the fact is, as people, as mankind, as humans, we are fearful. And so where should our fear be placed? Because it's going to exist in us somewhere. It should exist in the one that could take your life. It should exist in the one that can remove you from the earth. But it also should exist in the one that can keep us and hold us and make us His. Where is your hope, Christian, is also where your fear is. Hope and fear are so wonderfully related that it just seems to be one twisted on the other. Very often what we hope in turns into this awful, fearful thing where we become scared, and really we don't want it to happen, but we are fearful that it might happen, whatever it might be. And so who are we fearing? Not man, I hope. Not time, I hope. Not the toil that lays before us that seems purposeless, I hope. But God and God alone. Fear the one that can cast our soul into hell. Fear the one that can bring judgment upon us, but also fear the one who can redeem and save and restore. We've gathered this morning singing about Christ and the things of Christ, and Christ is the one who brings meaning into the world and takes away the vanity that exists. There is hope and meaning in Christ and Christ alone, that we can have not just goodness, but that we can rejoice in the restoration of the toil that God created us to do. That He can actually give us purpose in this life beyond the things that we find in the flesh, beyond the things that we find the world to say there's hope in. Hope in Christ and trust what He has done with the promises that He has made and the restoration that He seeks to bring and the straightening out of that which is bent and the counting of that could not be counted. Christian, I'm asking you, where is your hope? Ask yourself this for real. Because here's the easy way to answer it. Yeah, I've been a Christian longer than Brian's been alive. Or I've been a Christian longer than he's been a Christian. Or I've been a Christian for a really long time, and I know where my hope is. Is that how you live practically day in and day out? Is that how you live your moments of your life? Is that the reality of the expression of who you are before God in this world? Ask yourself these things for real. The answer might be yes. Praise God. The answer might be yes, but not always yes. At moments, yes. At the end of a sermon, yes. But when vain things and meaningless assail me in the dark of the night, where is my hope? Where is my joy? Who am I placing my fear on? Or am I allowing the enemy to come in, kill, steal, and destroy and take my joy? Take the hope that I have away from me. Christian, it's really easy to give the head nod to the words of the preacher. The question really becomes, Where's your heart in those dark, deep, hard moments? Pray that God gives you an understanding. Now is a great time to do this as we pull off this sheet and we participate in the Lord's table. We rejoice in what Christ has done. We remember His sacrifice for us. And then we remember where our hope lies. And then we see other people around us doing the same thing in which we are united with them. One of the greatest times that the church has in the life of the church is this moment, where our hearts and our minds together are rejoicing in what Christ has done to find meaning, so that we don't walk away going, everything is vain. What's the point? So what?